The Vesper doesn't sail through space, it groans through it. Imagine being trapped inside of a giant iron bell that's being struck by a hammer once every 10 seconds. That's the Vesper pulse. It's the sound of the massive ore refiners in the belly of the ship vibrating through the skeleton and into your very teeth. You don't just hear the ship, you feel it in your bones. I'm Miller. My title is Chief of Security, but out here, that's just a joke. You're not protecting the crew from space pirates, you're protecting them from the deep space stare. That moment when a crewman looks out of the viewport for too long and realizes that if the glass cracked, the universe wouldn't even blink as it swallowed him. It's day 305. The air in the mess hall tastes like copper and recycled sweat. I was sitting across from Sarah, our engineer. She's a gearhead. Always has grease under her fingernails and a wrench tucked into her belt. She was staring at her coffee, watching the vibrations of the ship create perfect concentric circles in the fluid. The resonance is off, Miller. The number 4 thruster is firing in microbursts. The computer says it's fine, but the hull is singing a different tune. I didn't think much of it then. Ships get old. They develop ticks. But that night, I saw the first ghost. I was doing a perimeter sweep of Deck 9, the storage level. It's a labyrinth of massive crates and pressurized tanks. The lights were dim to save power, casting long, skeletal shadows across the floor. I heard it before I saw it. A soft, wet slap on the metal, like a piece of raw meat hitting a counter. I swung my mag light towards the sound. The beam sliced through the floating dust motes and hit the wall. There was a smear of black iridescent oil. It looked like a bruise on the ship's skin. It shimmered a rainbow sheen, but when I got closer, the smell hit me. It wasn't oil, it was ozone. The sharp metallic scent that lingers after a lightning strike. It was so strong it made my nostrils burn. And then I saw the fingers. In the gap between 2 cargo crates, a hand reached out. It was impossibly long, too many joints. The skin, the color of a drowned man. It didn't grab the crate, it tapped it. The slender, clawed fingers moving with a rhythmic, mechanical precision, as if it were counting the vibrations of my heart. I blinked and it was gone. No sound of running, just the sudden, heavy silence of the vacuum. By day 308, the hitch Sarah mentioned had turned into a full-blown system failure. It wasn't just a rattle anymore. The ship was starting to lose its mind. The ship's internal logic was slowly rotting from the inside out. One moment we'd be sitting in a briefing on the bridge, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and unwashed flight suits, and suddenly the gravity would cut out. For half a second, your stomach would lurch into your throat and every loose pen and tablet would drift toward the ceiling, only for the artificial gravity to slam back down with a bone-jarring thud. The captain, a man named Vance who'd survived 3 shipwrecks and had scar tissue to prove it, was starting to look frayed. His eyes were bloodshot, the whites turned a sickly yellow by the emergency lighting. He kept touching the sidearm on his hip, his thumb flicking the safety on and off. "It's a virus," he insisted, pacing the bridge like a caged animal. "Some colony-born malware trying to ransom the ore. They want us to panic. They want us to blow the airlock so they can salvage the hull. Sarah, I want a hard reset of the central core. Cut the link to the external arrays." Sarah didn't look up from her tablet. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in a week. "I can't, Cap." Her voice was so thin I could barely hear it over the hum of the scrubbers. "The core isn't responding because the core isn't there anymore. The sensors are reporting empty ports. Something is physically pulling the processors out of the racks." We went down to the server room on deck 4. The heavy pressurized door, a 3-ton slab of reinforced steel, was ajar. It hadn't been hacked. It hadn't been blown. The magnetic plates had been unscrewed one by one. I found the bolts lined up on the floor. They were organized by length, a perfect descending line of silver screws shining in my flashlight beam. It was the work of an obsessive surgical mind. Inside the server racks were a graveyard of silicon. The fiber optic cables had been pulled from their ports like veins from a body, leaving trailing ends of glowing glass. They were woven into a nest in the corner, a dense obsidian black web of glass and copper. And in the center of the nest sat the first piece of salvage, if that's what you want to call it. It was Sarah's lucky wrench, the heavy chrome-plated tool she lost 2 days ago. It was being held by a cluster of those black, weary strands hoisted up like a religious relic. Miller, her hand over her mouth. It's not malware. Something is building a home out of our ship. We heard a sound then from the ventilation shaft directly above the server rack. A series of rapid-fire clicks. It sounded like a telegraph operator on a caffeine bender. I swung my light up, and for the first time, I saw the creature in full. It didn't have eyes, but it didn't need them. The flat, wide, T-shaped head swung back and forth in a slow hypnotic arc, tuning into the frequency of our voices. I saw its skin translucent, showing the pulse of silver fluid beneath the surface like mercury running through glass veins. Its legs were digigrade, the knees bent backward like a wolf's, ending in heavy hooked talons that were currently hooked into the main power lines. It wasn't just hiding, it was drinking the ship's lifeblood. We tried to trap it, but that was our first mistake, treating a god of the void like a goddamn stray dog. We lured it in Cargo Bay 3. It was the largest open space on the ship, a cavernous room filled with shipping containers and the smell of industrial grease. Sarah had rigged a high decibel sonic lure, a frequency she swore would vibrate the creature's internal organs until it was paralyzed. We stood behind the reinforced glass of the observation room. I could feel my own heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic, uneven rhythm. Captain Vance had a pulse rifle held tight against his shoulder. I had a heavy-duty welding torch, the blue pilot flame hissing in the silence. The creature entered the bay through the maintenance hatch. It didn't walk. It flowed across the ceiling, its talons leaving deep, jagged gouges in the metal. It stopped in the center of the room, its hammerhead skull tilting toward the lure. It looked confused. Or maybe it was just curious. Now! Vance hit the pressurization switch. The emergency sirens wailed, a deep chest-thumping honk that signaled the death of a ship. The outer hatch began to slide open, the vacuum of space howling like a banshee as it tried to suck the atmosphere out of the room. The creature didn't panic. It didn't fly out into the void like we expected. It jammed its long, slender fingers into the deck plates, the claws sinking 6 inches into the steel, anchoring it against the hurricane of escaping air. It looked directly at the observation glass, directly at us. Then the jaw unhinged. The bottom half of its skull dislocated with a wet, heavy thud. The skin of its neck stretched and expanded, unfolding like a black leather umbrella. It was similar to a gulper eel's mouth, a massive, cavernous pit of needle teeth that looked large enough to swallow a man whole. It let out a sound, not a roar, but a digital screeching feedback loop that blew out our comms and sent us to our knees, clutching our ears. Kale, our navigator, had leaned too close to the glass in his panic. The creature's tongue, a barbed obsidian lash, smashed through the reinforced window like it was made of paper. The pressure differential did the rest. Kale was pulled through the jagged hole, his suit tearing on the glass. The hammerhead met him halfway in the middle of the air. I watched in a trance of total, paralyzing horror as the massive jaw engulfed him. It didn't bite him, it folded him. The creature's jaw wrapped around his waist and then his chest, and then his head. The sounds of his bones snapping under the hydraulic pressure of the creature's maw sounded like dry kindling being thrown into a bonfire. Seal it! Seal the damn door! Vance was screaming, firing his rifle blindly into the bay, the blue vaults vanishing into the dark. We managed to hit the emergency bulkhead, the heavy door slamming shut and cutting off the sound of the vacuum, but Kale was gone. And when the red lights of the bay flickered back on, the creature was gone too. It hadn't gone out the airlock. It had gone back into the vents. The next 6 hours were a slow descent into a cold, dark hell. Without Sarah and engineering to balance the load, the gravity finally gave out for good. We were drifting through the halls of the Vesper, our flashlights the only thing cutting through the gloom. The ship was dying. The life support was wheezing a wet, rattling sound that meant the oxygen scrubbers were choked with that black, iridescent oil. "It's mimicking us," Sarah whispered. We were huddled in the med bay, the only room left with its own independent power supply. The air was so cold our breath came out in thick white plumes. "I heard Kale 10 minutes ago." He was calling my name from the laundry chute. He said he found a way out, but it wasn't Kale. It was the ship's own internal intercom playing back a recording of him from 3 months ago. It's using the ship to talk to us. I looked at the med bay door. It was a pressure-sealed bulkhead designed to withstand a hull breach. And then we heard it. It wasn't a bang. It wasn't a roar. It was the sound of metal on metal friction. I shone my light at the top hinge of the door, and I saw a slender, pale finger, longer than a human hand, inserted into the recessed screw hole. It wasn't prying. It was rotating, with the strength of a hydraulic press and the precision of a jeweler. The hammerhead alien was manually unscrewing the hinges. One by one, the heavy titanium bolts drifted out of the holes, floating in the zero-gravity air like tiny silver bullets. "Vance, get ready." My voice cackling from the cold. The door panel didn't burst open. It simply drifted inward. That magnetic seals clicking as they failed. The hammerhead was waiting in the hallway. Its digigrade legs tucked tight against his chest to fit into the narrow corridor. It looked like a coiled spring made of bone and translucent skin. It didn't attack. Not at first. It tilted that wide, bony skull, the T-shape blocking the entire doorway. And then it looked at Vance, and his throat began to vibrate. "Captain." The voice was Kale's, but it was layered with the mechanical hum of a dying computer. It was a harmony of the dead. "The harvest is 98% complete. We just need the final core. Your marrow is compatible." Vance screamed. The raw primal sound of a man who had reached his breaking point. He ignited his welding torch, the blue flame cutting through the dark, but the creature was a shadow. It used his wide head to deflect the heat, the bony armor absorbing the flame as if it were nothing. It wrapped its slender fingers around Vance's helmet and twisted. I didn't see the kill. I only saw the silver. The mercury-like oil spray across the walls and the strobe of the emergency lights. I grabbed Sarah by the harness and shoved her toward the emergency chute. "Run! Don't look back! Just get to the pods!" "I'm in pod 4. I don't know how I got here. My memory is a series of strobe light images, the smell of ozone and the sound of talons on metal, and the freezing cold of the vacuum as I cycled the airlock. I keep looking at the empty seat next to me. The harness is dangling, swinging back and forth with a slight vibration of the pod's thrusters. Sarah was supposed to be in that seat. I pushed her toward the chute. I heard her boots hitting the metal rungs. I told her I'd be right behind her. But when I reached the pod bay, the hatch to pod 1, Sarah's pod was already sealed. I saw the launch light turn green. I saw the frost flare against the glass as the explosive bolts fired. I watched her pod streak away into the dark. And for a second, I felt a surge of hope so strong it made me lightheaded. She made it. She's out of there. But as my own pod cleared the Vesper, I looked back at pod 1. It wasn't moving like a ship, it was tumbling. And through the small porthole of her pod, I didn't see Sarah's face. I saw a flash of pale, translucent skin. I saw a T-shaped shadow pressed against the glass. She didn't get into an escape pod, she got into a coffin with it. I've been sitting here for 3 hours trying to convince myself I saw it wrong. I've been telling myself that the black oil on my sleeve is just grease, and not the residue of that thing that took her. I haven't mentioned her name once since I launched. If I don't say it, maybe she's still alive. If I don't say it, maybe I'm not the last human being within 1,000,000 miles. The pod is small. It's a coffin for one. The smelling of stale oxygen and the metallic tang of my own fear. I've set the beacon to emergency, but I know no one's coming. Not in time. I sat back in the pilot's chair and I'm trying to breathe. I'm trying to convince myself I am the survivor. But then I hear it. A sound that shouldn't exist in a sealed escape pod. A clink. A small titanium screw hit the floorboards behind my seat.